Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of your Neuromuscular Systems 1 class. And this week we are going to review neuroanatomy. Just a quick review, we are going to condense everything you learned in your first semester in one lecture here. So let's begin. Previously on neuroanatomy. And yes, if you thought you're done with neuroanatomy, the nightmares are back. So you are now back in neuro and back to neuroanatomy. So let's begin with the basics. Can you pause this video and think about how many lobes does the brain have? And can you name them and locate them? So let's pause the video here and see if you can remember that. That's very basic. Okay, I hope you got that. If you said 4 lobes, that's okay, but there are actually 5 lobes if you remember, because there is a hidden insular lobe along with your frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. So let's start with that. So this is your cerebral cortex, which we'll go over today. Your limbic system is located right here. Your cerebellum is like your little brain located in the back. And then this is your brainstem. Moving forward, these are your 4 lobes, and with the hidden insular lobe, there are 5 lobes in the brain. So you have your frontal lobe, your parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe in the back. Let's begin with the frontal lobe. We don't have to go too much into the sulci and gyri this time. You don't have to identify any parts on any brain structures, but we do need to know the function of each structure, because when we study the diagnosis this semester, you will study diagnoses that impact a particular structure, and hence it's important to know its function. So your frontal lobe is divided from the parietal lobe by the central sulcus here, and divided by the temporal lobe from the sylvian fissure here. So that's your frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe itself is divided into the premotor cortex, which is right in front of the motor cortex. This is your main area that initiates motor responses, and the premotor and the supplementary motor area plans motor actions. Then you have the prefrontal area that is related to cognition, and then the Broca's area over here that is related to speech production. We'll go over each of them in more detail just so that you remember them. So as I said, this is the prefrontal cortex. It is associated with cognition and executive commands, as well as it really focuses on your personality. So everything that makes you as a person is due to the prefrontal cortex. It also helps with self-control, problem solving, planning, and memory. So this area is specifically may be impacted in stroke, in TBI, in multiple sclerosis, and it is definitely impacted in Alzheimer's disease. So these patients who may have impaction of their prefrontal cortex will present with problems with their executive function, their cognition, their memory, planning, as well as self-control. And we will see how to tackle these symptoms in these patients and how to change your therapy in response to these symptoms when we cover those specific diagnoses. Just a quick history lesson here, because I love history. And I have mentioned this before, like 1.5 years from now. But if you have forgotten it, this is Phineas Gage, and he was the one who had an iron rod driven through his head in an accident, and that's how they found the function of the prefrontal cortex, because he was like a very calm personality, and after the accident, the only thing changed in his personality was only thing changed in his function was his personality, and he had significant behavioral changes. So he became very impulsive and aggressive and started swearing a lot, and that was not him before. So that's how they found out the function of the prefrontal cortex. They did remove the rod later on, and this is his picture holding that rod that went through his prefrontal cortex and then through his orbit. Moving on to the premotor cortex over here. So you have the motor area, which is in light blue over here, and the premotor cortex is right in front of it, anteriorly in purple. So the premotor cortex is related to goal-oriented actions, and it prepares, selects, and initiates movements. So what it does is it ensures, for example, if you were to write a note to your friend on Zoom or in person, the premotor cortex will ensure that to write a note, you first have to search for a pen and paper instead of first writing the note up in the air. And then it will plan and initiate, it will coordinate with the prefrontal cortex to ensure what you want to write. And it will ensure that you have good posture for your forearm and hand, and that the motor area knows how to perform this action. So it helps to initiate, it helps to plan the movement and initiate the movement. And if there is a lesion in the premotor cortex, then the person will have difficulty planning their movement. For example, we will see a case when we cover stroke. We will see a case where a patient may not know whether to put his socks first or to put his shoes on first. And this seems like a very obvious thing to do. But because they have impaction in their premotor cortex, they will not know what's the sequence of a very regular motor action. So as I said, the premotor cortex also helps with the speed and automaticity of reaching and grasping, sequential movements, and gait and posture. So it helps with these things because it also requires a lot of planning when you reach for something, and specifically when a movement has sequence, like wearing your shoes. Requires you to first wear your socks and then wear your shoes and then tie your laces. So that's a sequence of movement that we always conduct very automatically, but someone with a premotor impaction will not know how to conduct that. Next is the supplementary motor area. So this is an area right in front of the primary motor cortex and just superior to the premotor cortex. The supplementary motor area is involved in, again, initiation of movement similar to the premotor area, but what it does specifically is the orientation of eyes and head. So suppose if you want to kick a soccer ball, you need to see where the kick is or where the goal is, and orient your eyes and head to that action. Planning bimanual, sequential, or faster complex movements is also a function of the supplementary motor area. So this may involve like typing or playing a piano, because these are anti-phase hand movements, meaning that if you flex one finger, you're extending the others. So it requires a lot of sequence and fast complex movements, and the supplementary motor area helps with these movements. Again, if you have a patient with stroke, TBI, multiple sclerosis, or even pediatric conditions who have impaction in this area, will have difficulty with these faster complex movements. Lastly, in the motor areas, we have the primary motor area. This is the main motor area right in front of your central sulcus, shown in blue over here, and it is what executes the movement. So after the supplementary motor area and premotor area have planned everything, have initiated the movement, the primary motor area is the one that executes fine motor control of your hand and lower face. It has contralateral representation of hand, foot, and lower face, and bilateral representation of the trunk, which means that your right primary motor area controls your left hand, your left foot, and your left lower face, and it controls the right primary motor area controls bilaterally, or has bilateral control of your trunk. So the trunk is controlled bilaterally by both hemispheres. And specifically, you may think like, why is face coming in between? It's because your face, the lower half of the face, is related to speech production, and it controls the motor aspect of making sounds, if that makes sense. Like if specifically to your cranial nerve 5 and the muscles that control your lower half of the face. We will discuss Broca's area, which is related to motor aspect of language production, and that's different from this motor aspect over here. So if someone has the lower half of the face impacted in the primary motor area, but the Broca's area is intact, they will have what is called as dysarthria. That is, their speech will not be very accurate in pronunciation. It's like speaking with a mouthful of food. Your speech, you will not have a language issue. You'll know what to say, but it will just not be clear because your muscles are not functioning to the most appropriate level because of the food in your mouth. So, as I've already mentioned, the areas or the functions that will be impacted if someone has a stroke in this area is that they will have weakness of their hand and foot, and a lot of tonal issues as well, loss of motor control, and they may have dysarthria because their lower half of the face will be impacted. And they may also have truncal issues, which will cause balance issues when they walk or when they try to sit without support. Moving on to Broca's area. Broca's area is the area that controls your planning of movement during speech production and grammatical aspects of language, which means that it controls for each language that you know, it will control the words and the grammar for that language. So your vocabulary. Like right now, I know what to say for this slide, and it's because my Broca's area is intact. But if my Broca's area is affected, which is located in the dominant hemisphere, so for me, it's located in my left hemisphere because I am right dominant. But again, if my Broca's area is impacted, I will not be able to speak fluently, and I will not know what words to use to talk to you or to explain anything to you. That's why it's called motor aphasia, expressive aphasia, or non-fluent aphasia, because they have problem in expressing what they want to say, and they will not find words to explain what they want to say. The best way to learn about Broca's aphasia is to see a video. You have seen this video before, so you can skip through it. But I would suggest to watch this video even if you have seen it before, because now this is about a patient with Broca's aphasia. And in your clinical practice, you may frequently see patients with Broca's aphasia, and it's important to be patient with them, to let them speak, even if they speak slowly, to let them complete their sentences. So again, this will be a practice, because if you skip forward in that video, that means that you may not be patient right now with this person who's trying to complete his sentences. So try to watch the video.
Can you tell us your name?
Mike Caputo.
And Mike, what was your stroke? And what did you used to do?
So here you see how he's having trouble finding words, and there is no cognitive problem. This is important when you treat such patients, because seems very cognitively aware of everything. He seems very intelligent, and that's what they want you to know when you speak to them, that they and also you don't need to slow down how you're talking to them, because they are not deaf, and or they are not able to understand what you're saying. They just need patience to let them complete their sentences. So you can watch the rest of the video